affected who you are. Some of the people who've influenced you to be who you are. I'm sure there's more than one person. I'm sure there's quite a few people. But if you think about coaches or teachers or parents or grandparents or aunts or uncles or neighbors or bosses or friends, or who has influenced you to be, in some parts, who you are. So, on the count of three, shout out a name. It can just be a first name. But just shout out a name of somebody who has influenced you in some sort of a way. Right? 1, 2, 3. Alright. So, all of us have somebody who's influenced us in some way or another. And what's cool is behind those names, there's a story. And there's a story that you know because it's changed something about who you are. Barbara Parshall was one of my Sunday school teachers in 4th or 5th grade, or maybe it was both. I don't exactly remember. But what I remember about Barbara Parshall is that she had been teaching for pretty much her entire life, and she was in her 80s when she taught me. And she taught me that there's always something new to learn about the Bible. And I got inspired from her to learn about the Bible. Jerry Bauma was a choir director during college that I had. And Jerry was a quirky guy for sure, but he loved music, and he was serious about music. And he taught me that it's not, you don't just do music to stand out when you're in a choir. You do music to make something beautiful as a group. So he taught me to be part of a group when you're doing something like that. When I was a kid, there was a boy named Joshua Hess, and he was a neighbor a few blocks away. And Joshua was somebody who I didn't hang out with a lot. We didn't play soccer together. We didn't go to each other's houses hardly at all. But we were in classes together almost every year. And when it came time to group projects, he was the guy I wanted in my group. Because he knew how to do a project and to do it well. And even to take it beyond what the assignment really was. And he always inspired me to take whatever I was doing and make it better than what was just assigned. There's story after story after story, person after person in all of our lives that has taught us something or has left us with something that has affected who we are. And what's interesting is it seems that there's this pattern in the Bible of people influencing people in terms of their faith and in terms of how they understand God. It's like people grow people. I mean, think about David and Solomon, kings who influenced people, person after person, people who influenced each other, father and son. Think about Moses, who grew in his understanding of God and influenced so many other people in their understanding of God, a whole nation of people. God speaks through Isaiah and the prophets to grow people's understanding about what God is going to do. God gives Daniel the wisdom and understanding about the future and what's ahead so that people can understand what God is going to be doing out ahead. I mean, person after person in the Bible, God uses people, and those people then in turn influence so many other people. And so this pattern emerges. This pattern is throughout Scripture, and it kind of looks like this. God uses people to grow people. People grow when they see God act. And people share the exciting things God has done. Just kind of a natural pattern. The thing is, that's not just true for the Bible way back then. It's true for us. So we could translate this to God uses you and me to grow people. People grow when they see God act in us, and we share the exciting things God does in us. If we simply share the things that God does, that we notice that God is doing, amazing things can happen. In the country of Greece in the 1st century, there were some amazing things that happened, and some things that actually stood out, which in and itself is amazing. Because in Greece, Greece was a country that was kind of the crossroads of everything. It was the popular place. It's where all the business was happening. It's where all the trade was happening. It's where people went and to see the newest trends. It's where things were progressive. and things were really happening. Things were being shaken up. This was the place, one of the places to be in the world. So if anything stood out in first century Greece, it must have been something pretty amazing, because there were all kinds of things that were happening all around there. Well, within the country of Greece, there was a region called Macedonia. And within the region of Macedonia was a city called Thessalonica. And within the city of Thessalonica was this brand new upstart church. These people had gathered together and they had started a church. And in the middle of this new church were a bunch of people who had experienced some amazing things that had happened to them. And as they started to share the stories of the amazing things that happened to them, God continued to do some amazing things in growing some other people. And in the spirit of what we've been talking about with the parables for the last couple of months, this whole idea of Jesus changes our understanding and Jesus grows our concept of who God is, almost to the point of being able to say, well, what if this was possible? Or what if, God, you really could do this? Or what if, Jesus, you did have the power to change this? These stories that Jesus tells can inspire us to ask these questions like, well, what if this happened in my life? In the same way, these amazing things that are happening, they inspire me to say, well, God, if you can do that, what if you could do all these other things? When we see the stories of things that God has done in other people, it can make us ask questions, well, what if that could happen in my life? People grow people. And when we see God act, it can grow us. And when we share the things that God does, amazing things can happen. So here's an amazing thing that happened. In that region of Macedonia, in that city of Thessalonica, and in that upstart church, this is Paul writing to them. He says, we know, dear brothers and sisters, that God loves you and has chosen you to be his own people. For when we brought you the good news, it was not only with words, but also with power. For the Holy Spirit gave you full assurance that what we said was true. And you know of our concern for you from the way we lived when we were with you. So you received the message with joy from the Holy Spirit, in spite of the severe suffering it brought you. In this way, you imitated both us and the Lord. As a result, you have become an example to all the believers in Greece, throughout both Macedonia and Achaia. And now the word of the Lord is ringing out from you to people everywhere, even beyond Macedonia and Achaia. For wherever we go, we find people telling us about your faith in God. We don't need to tell them about it, for they keep talking about the wonderful welcome you gave us and how you turned away from idols to serve the living and true God. And they speak of how you were looking forward to the coming of God's Son from heaven, Jesus, whom God raised from the dead. He is the one who has rescued us from the terrors of the coming judgment. Now we get this idea of the story of what God is doing through this church, and it was kind of spreading sort of wildly. You know, Paul even says, I don't even have to tell the story anymore. It's like the story is telling itself. You could say in our day it's going viral. You know, it's the story that's just feeding on itself, and it just gets told and told and told, and it just naturally grows, and people want to tell this story. There was something that was happening there. We sort of get the idea of what it is, but we don't get all the details. You know, what's the whole story? What's the glimpse of what's really happening that's so exciting that people just keep on telling it, and it gets wider and wider? Well, there's a little hint at what the story is toward the end of the passage when it says, they keep talking about the wonderful welcome you gave us and how you turned away from idols, and they speak of how you were looking forward to the coming of God's Son from heaven, Jesus, whom God raised from the dead. I mean, it's a summary, but it seems that these people grabbed onto something about what Jesus had done for them, and it so changed them that they then told other people about it. You know, it gave them hope about what's coming, it changed their lives. Now, Jesus did something in them that they got so excited about that they started telling other people about, and then it just kind of spread all over the place. And people are catching wind of all this. So I wonder, how did all this happen? Like, what specifically happened that got them so excited? You know, did somebody just tell them about Jesus and all of a sudden they were aflame and they were excited and they were telling? I mean, what happened? Well, the cool thing about this event is that It's also in the book of Acts, and it gives a lot more background, and it helps give a picture of what really is going on. So, this is story time, so enjoy the story. It's a little bit longer than what we just read, so relax and just picture in your mind what is happening and what this looked like. So Paul and Silas then traveled through the towns of Amphipolis and Apollonia and came to Thessalonica, where there was a Jewish synagogue. As was Paul's custom, he went to the synagogue service, and for 3 Sabbaths in a row, he used the scriptures to reason with the people. He explained the prophecies and proved that the Messiah must suffer and rise from the dead. He said, "This Jesus I'm telling you about is the Messiah." Some of the Jews who listened were persuaded and joined Paul and Silas, along with many God-fearing Greek men and quite a few prominent women. But some of the Jews were jealous. So they gathered some troublemakers from the marketplace to form a mob and start a riot. They attacked the home of Jason, searching for Paul and Silas so they could drag them out of the crowd. Not finding them there, they dragged out Jason and some of the other believers instead, and took them before the city council. "Paul and Silas have caused trouble all over the world," they shouted, "and now they are here disturbing our city too. And Jason has welcomed them into his home. They're guilty of treason against Caesar, for they profess allegiance to another king named Jesus." The people of the city, as well as the city council, were thrown into turmoil by these reports. So the officials forced Jason and the other believers to post bond, and then they released them. See, what was supposed to happen? They were supposed to throw them in prison. But these people who were believing in Jesus, they just paid some money, and what happened? They're out. Now, if you're somebody who's in here seeing all this, watching all this happen, hearing these things, watching these people get arrested and then tried, and then they get released. I mean, what a cool story. Because that's not likely. It's not supposed to happen that way, but it does. And in this time, it seemed like there were 2 very distinct reactions you could have toward what Paul was saying and preaching and talking about Jesus. You either believed and you were totally on fire and excited, or you rejected it and you were totally on fire against those people who were totally excited. I mean, there was no middle ground, it seemed like, in this situation. It was one or the other. So if you're on the side of the people who said, "Yeah, Jesus, we understand you, we believe in you, we're for you, we're on your side," and then you see these people, your partners, people who believe along with you, get imprisoned, get arrested, but then not in prison, they get saved, you're like, "Did you hear what happened? You never believe what happened. Do you believe what God did? He did this." I mean, that's a story that goes, isn't it? That's a story that gets told and retold. So no wonder Paul's talking about this story just gets told and it's everywhere and everybody seems to know about this. I mean, they talked about what they got excited about and what they saw God do. This past week we were in Kansas visiting my grandmother and a bunch of relatives, and so it was an opportunity to see lots of people that either we haven't seen before or haven't seen in a long time. So there was a lot of getting reacquainted and, "Hey, what do you do?" and, "Hey, how do you spend your time?" and, "Where do you live?" and just all those kind of meeting people sorts of things. And it was really interesting hearing the stories that people would tell me when we're just getting acquainted. Because the stories that people tell are very revealing about, who they are and what they like to do. For all of us, it's that way. Even more fascinating, though, I found, was the stories that I started to tell, not planning to tell any specific stories or anything, but as they were asking me, "Well, who are you, and what do you do, and where's your family, and where do you live?" And the stories that I started to tell just naturally were obviously the stories that I was kind of excited about. And I started telling stories about you. I started telling stories about this church. I started telling stories about the Bible club that we've started, and about how we meet at a school. And I was talking with a distant kind of cousin by marriage, and he is involved in a church that meets at a school. And so we started swapping stories about what that's like. And he understood my stories, and I understood his stories. And we grew. And it was cool because I realized I was telling the stories that I was excited about. And as I did, I not just that when we tell stories somebody else might grow, when we tell stories, especially about the things that God is doing that we're excited about, we grow. It brings to our minds what God is doing, and oh yeah, that's right! God, you do that sort of thing. I mean, it can encourage us, and it can grow us the more we tell the stories about the things that God is doing. God uses you and me to grow people. People grow when they see God act in us, and we grow when we see God act in other people, and we share the exciting things that God does in us. I love why Paul is even telling the story in the first place. You know, it's the beginning of this letter, and Paul always starts pretty much all his letters in the same way, which is, I thank God for you because you're so amazing and you have great faith, and so I thank God for you. And then he tells the story. I mean, Paul tells the story because he's thankful for these people. He's thankful for the things that they're doing, the ways that they're telling these stories. He's kind of overflowing with this thanks, and he says, and here's why. How cool that when we're thankful for things, it can inspire us to tell the stories about the things that we're thankful for. I love being able to tell stories about RiverCross and about the things that God is doing. Because recalling those things, for me, builds my faith and encourages me and reminds me about what God has done and what God is doing. I believe that every one of us is a storyteller. Some of us may be more practiced at it. Some of us may be more exuberant. Some of us may be more serious. Some of us may be quicker to recall a certain story. Some of us may go longer and more in depth with the story. But we're all storytellers because we've all experienced things. And we've all experienced God doing something. And when we tell those stories, we are the only ones, each of us, who can tell our unique story. Because even though, for example, all of us are part of RiverCross, and we could experience the same thing, we will all tell it differently. And there are people who need to hear the unique way that each of us tells that story. People resonate with your personality and your way of talking and your way of thinking and the things that you've seen so differently than if another one of us told that story. If we tell the stories about the things that God is doing, somebody else might grow. But we might grow also. Because when we see and we notice the things that God is doing, we share those and they flood our minds, that's when we discover the ways that God can grow us and grow others. So let's keep telling stories. Let's not tire of telling stories. Let's continue to tell those stories so that we can see them maybe even go viral. Let's pray.